Every day, Tanjir Guo's father carries him downstairs from their home on the 6th floor of a Changsha apartment building, down to the busy street where Mr. Tan has a little shop.
小时候我们还带他去外面玩一下，因为满足他，因为他年纪大了以后，可能出去也经不方便。小时候我们就带他出去玩一下。
Tanjir Guo is 16 years old. He has cerebral palsy that limits his ability to move and communicate. Caring for their son has been challenging for the Tans.
现在都还马马虎虎，就是怕以后啊，他随着他年龄的增大了，他的身体越来越不好。
Experts from ICC have been working with Guo on a regular basis. We helped him get a wheelchair, and therapists have trained the parents on ways to keep their son in good health.
Too hard, food will fall out of his mouth. This is too much, he could swallow. So what we're looking for...
The young man has the potential to start using computers to communicate and explore his world.
Before you take him out of... We've just done a short assessment with him, and his potential is we can get him sitting upright, so we can get him using keyboards, we can get him playing games, working in the shop even.
Helping each child achieve their potential is always ICC's goal. The Tans are committed to caring for their son's needs. That means that Mr. Tan spends 5 to 6 hours a day providing basic care, including the difficult task of bathing Guo.
一个人把他抱起，怕他摔倒啊，有时候又使劲怕他摔倒啊，另外一个人就洗。
A family willing to do whatever it takes for a child with disabilities deserves people doing whatever they can to help them.
Morning, everyone. Another online sermon. I'm sure some of us are getting a bit fed up with online sermons. But and I'm really sad that I can't be with you today. I always love to come to New Life. You know, I've always said you're my favourites. And then I also get some fab entertainment usually when I'm down there. A pig, whatever it was, or an Elvis tribute act. So yes, I'm really sorry that I can't be there. Hopefully next year. But I'm sure, you know, most of us are missing someone. So I just want to tell you that a long time ago, I woke up the morning that Princess Diana died. You know, lots of you remember that sort of iconic moment. And I was due to preach that morning, and I had to go and take a prepared sermon and to a congregation that was in shock and preach. Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard to do. But actually, I found this harder. I found it hard to focus because it just seems like there are so many. There's so much to go. There's so much, not just the pandemic, so many things to be concerned about in the world. Too much to say in a short time, but I'm going to try and just reflect a little bit with you on how God helped me to see him at work in my life and in the world just more recently. But before I do that, this is a great opportunity for me to thank you again for your faithful generosity to ICC's children, to abandoned kids in China for so long, so faithfully, so generously, so lovingly. The way that you sacrificed and gave financially during lockdown was, to me, a really great example of the upside down nature of the kingdom. You know, that people in the West would dig deep and give so generously and pray so lovingly for children who in their culture are at the very bottom of the pile. You see the contrast? It's a great example to me of God's upside down kingdom at work. I'm thinking about Ephesians 3 verse 20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine or dream of, according to his work, his power that is at work within us. But I've realized that sometimes I can't always see it. Sometimes I don't always see that. I was in China the first time in 2004 on a short-term team when a fight broke out between a caregiver and a young boy of about 13. I suddenly heard shouting and became aware of screaming and a lot of noise. And a few of us on that team sort of ran to where the commotion was coming from. And as I turned the corner, I saw a woman, a caregiver, fighting with a child. There were a group of young children with disabilities around, and one or two older caregivers, adult caregivers, all standing around watching. He was deaf and mute and quite severely physically disabled, and he was fighting back. The woman's face was contorted in rage, and she was punching and kicking. And I'll never forget the look on her face. I can still see it now. She was just so angry, so full of rage. Everyone seemed to sort of, it was a bit like things slowed down and everything went into slow motion, and nobody moved. But then we had a big, young 19-year-old, big strapping 19-year-old lad on the team with us. And he stepped in and broke up this fight. I managed to get that little boy, the 13-year-old boy, and take him somewhere quiet and private. And he sat on the bed, and I sat on a chair next to him. And he bent over and put his face in his lap, and he cried silently for 2 hours. And I don't know for sure, but I imagine that he was crying about being deaf, being abandoned by his family, being ignored, being laughed at, being cold and hungry and neglected, feeling lonely, being assaulted. There's so many losses in such a short life. And all I could do was sit with an arm around him. There's nothing to say because he was deaf and he had his face in his lap. He couldn't hear me. And at that time, we would ask the caregivers, what's this child's name? What's this child called? And most of the children didn't even have the dignity of a name. They were the nameless ones. So many of them without a name even. But he has done immeasurably more than I could ask or imagine in Hanyang and in Changsha through the love and prayers of churches like you and people who've gone to serve these lost least children within a society that doesn't value them. You see the upside down nature of that. And the kingdom of Jesus is upside down because he tells us that the last shall be first. When you're weak, you're strong. To be a leader, you must be a servant. To truly find life, we must die to self. To get back at your enemy, you have to love them. And to become rich, give your money away, all upside down and countercultural to our normal values. Well, today, the kingdom of God is everywhere in Hanyang and in Changsha. It's an amazing thing to see, especially when, like me, I was able to see what it was like 14, 15 years ago. Today, every child is known by name. Every child is really, truly loved and cherished. Today, they're teaching us about love and life. They're teaching us these nameless ones, these children who are at the very bottom of the pile in society. They're the weak ones. They're teaching us really important lessons about what's valuable and what's precious in life. Today, they're telling others about God's love, and today they are the ambassadors for change in the nation. These weaklings, these weak ones, these ones who have no value. God is opening doors for us in China that we hadn't even dreamed would be possible. We hadn't even dreamed some of the things that God is opening up for us. He's opening up opportunities for us that we really thought were dead in the water 18 months ago. You might remember that we went through a long process of over a year trying to get registration so that we could stay in China. And it looked very much like we weren't going to get that registration and we would have to come out. So things are happening now that, like I say, we just could not have imagined in that time. And he's kind of unfolding out before us like a red carpet, a vision of what he wants to do through the work of ICC and through the prayers and the love of many people around the world like you. He's revealing a vision of how to bring the kingdom of God to needy and vulnerable people, children and families in China, across China, that is so huge it's making us gobsmacked. We're thinking, how are we going to do that? But we're really believing that that this big vision is where God's calling us to serve and to engage and fight for and advocate and bring the kingdom to so many of these kids and families. But the cultural change from me seeing that woman fighting with that young boy to where we are recently, where, as you know, 81 of our Chinese caregivers went into Hanyang in lockdown and stayed for 85 days. They left their families, they left their own children with their husbands. They came in and they were willing and joyful in doing really long shifts, doing work that they hadn't done before. They were sleeping on makeshift beds. And the contrast between that lady, that caregiver, and the caregiving today is a huge leap. But it didn't happen overnight. That cultural shift towards these who are the last and the least has been brought about really by blood, sweat and tears over many years by faithful people who stayed obedient to their calling, people who refused to give up, people who dug in their heels, people who waited and prayed and didn't pack in when it was hard, and they birthed a new thing. It's supernatural, the amount of cost that was involved in making that sort of giant leap. And it took many people and much love to bring that change, to bring the kingdom to these nameless ones. And we're all in one way or another, called by him to engage with what he has planned for the world around us. My family, my friends, my work colleagues, my neighbours. But the waiting period in waiting to see, what the good that he can do and the good that he can bring, it sometimes takes a long waiting period. Some of you might still be in the waiting period of seeing the good things that you're praying for, like Steve praying before earlier for the prodigals. There are some of you who might have been praying for prodigals for years. Some of you may be tired of the waiting, worn out of the waiting, tired of digging your heels in and hoping. Some of you may still be in that sort of blood, sweat and tears period of staying faithful to God's call on your life. And during this time when everything is so different, can you see something of what he's doing, has done, or is planning for you? Is this possibly a time where you could take some time out to reflect back, and perhaps a long way back, to see where you were, where your family was, where you are now, and where you're hoping to be in the future? And just to, I hope that this just is a reminder to you to kind of dig in, hold on, and that you'll find hope again today that God is for you and he has good plans and he's faithful, as we've already said. So what happened to the boy who cried? Well, I think there are some photographs. There's a couple of photographs. He's called Song Mu, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to see these photographs. Today, Song Mu is a happy, loving, lovable, kind young man. He has skills that mean he can work. He still has very little. All of our children have very little in terms of money or possessions, but they're so generous with what they have. It's really humbling to see what a generous spirit they have. So he has very little, but he's very happy with his lot. He shares what he has with others. He has friends who value him and make him laugh. He works on the farm with their Genshin, and he's part of a family. He's part of a community that really love him. He works hard as a handyman. He fixes wheelchairs for other kids. So he has a purpose, and he's doing good in the world. I'm not sure if you can see the photographs, but Songmu has club feet, a really terrible example of club feet. Basically, if that is the sole of your foot, Songmu's feet are back, so he actually walks on the top of his feet. So his feet actually look like they're the completely wrong way around. So he's persevered and had a lot of difficulties. But I can see what God has done in his life through people like you. I want to thank you that you continue to invest in children who are the last and the least in their culture. I want to thank you that you have built that upside down kingdom in hundreds and hundreds of children and families. They have hope. They're hearing about a God who loves them. And they are everyday examples of the upside down nature of the kingdom, in that they're teaching us so much. But I also want to just remind you that he hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't forgotten the plans he has for you and your world and our world. So my word to you today is to hold on, dig in, dig deep, look up, because he is still today able to do immeasurably more than we can ask, dream of, imagine, according to his power that is at work in every single one of us for our good. So thank you, and God bless you, and I hope very much that I get to see you in person next year. Lots of love. Bye-bye.